today. He is a volunteer at the fire department in Mount Joy since 1981. He started with urban search and rescue in 2015 with his current dog on the federal and local level. And he retired from the county of Lancaster as the director of emergency in 2021. So welcome, Bill.
Okay, so can everybody hear me okay without being behind the mic? Okay. All right. So if you can't, just tell me and I'll speak up. So I see Joe Redmond when I need to go to the eye doctor, and he said that, or asked me if I'd come and give a presentation about Surfside, because we had gone down in June of, well, actually we were there in July of 2021, and you've probably seen on TV or heard about the condo collapse that took place down there, and Pennsylvania went, and I'll explain some of the other things. So we spent about 2 weeks there, mostly doing recovery. We weren't really doing any rescue, and we'll talk about some of that stuff as well. But as Denise said, I've been in the fire department since 1981. I started when I was 16, so I'm not that old, but I'm pretty old. I remember Greg, he ran at E-Town quite a bit, so we go back there. And I worked for the county for just shy of 38 years before retiring. Started as a 911 dispatcher and then moved to emergency management and got out, and I'm glad. Although there's been no big snowstorm or weather event since I retired, which sort of pisses me off a little bit, because that creates a lot of work, but I haven't had a chance to enjoy it on the outside yet. So what we're going to talk about is the response down to the Champlain Towers in Surfside, Florida. Now, everything that you hear is basically, my viewpoints, my opinion. I am not here representing FEMA, and I'm not here representing the state of Pennsylvania in any way, but that's how we got there. So you're going to see a lot of references to the FEMA system, and we're going to talk about it, but all the viewpoints and everything that I bring up here are mine and only mine. Okay, so on the Urban Search and Rescue Task Force, I'm a canine search specialist. This is Lucy, and that's at one of the training sites in New York. She's a yellow lab. She's now 10 and a half and pretty much retired. When we went down there, she would have been, 8, 9 years old. But she's starting to wear out. We get about 10 years out of these dogs, and she's really good at her job. She can still do it, but I'm afraid to get her on rubble piles anymore because her agility is starting to fade off a little bit, as all of us do. I don't want her to try to make a jump that she thinks she can make and then not be able to. So, and you're going to get to see a video of her working at a different training site, and you'll sort of get an idea of what the dogs need to do and how they do it. Now, she's a live find dog. We have about 280 live find dogs in the system nationwide that are certified to do this work. And then there's probably about 80 human remains detection dogs. Okay, so what we're finding in the system, though, is there's a lot more work for the human remains detection dogs than there are live find dogs. For a long time in the system, we didn't even have the human remains detection dogs at all, but this response was primarily human remains work. The response out to Hawaii and Lahaina, they didn't take any live find dogs to that. There was about 30 human remains dogs from the system working out there. So, who knows what the system is going to do? We have to deploy with 4 live find dogs. The HR dogs are optional, but I think you're going to start to see some changes with that. And I think you're going to start to see some changes with the numbers. Like I said, we got 280 live find, about 80 human remains dogs. You're probably going to see that number switch because people want to do the work. We train these dogs pretty much, every weekend of the year, and you want to be able to work your dog. So that's what I think we may find out. There again, that's just my opinion. We'll see what goes on. So this is going to be a short video of Lucy working at a training site. This was a site that recycled concrete, and this is just busted up pieces of an old highway that they had taken there. But it we try to find sites that simulate a collapsed building. All right, so you're going to see some pictures later on of Surfside that this is what we think collapsed building looks like, but it's really not. All right, so we'll play this. See if this goes out. I don't know. We might. There is sound to this. I don't want to crank it up too much. Oh, that's music there. There we go. So as you can see, she's working her way around. Now you see the wooden pallets there. There's a person hidden underneath there, and you'll see she starts to show some interest in that area, and then she barks. That's her indication that there's someone there. All right, so she'll keep working at it. She'll zero in on the scent, and she's standing right on top of where the person is. And then the person rewards the dog. They come out with her frisbee, and they play with the dog. So this is a game to the dog. Okay, they're looking for live human scent somewhere out there, and when they find it and they bark, someone's going to come out with their toy. All right, so that's how we train them. Really, the person hiding does a lot more of the training than anything else. So you have to have good victims that are in there, but that's what they do. Okay, so we can cover a very large area in a very short period of time with these dogs, as where if we had to look in each one of those voids to try to find a person, it would take us, days to clear that area. All right, so yeah, that's fine, yeah.
What are live human scents as opposed, like if there's a little morbid, but if you're freshly deceased,
well,
what's the difference between a fresh deceased smell and
that's a very good question, and the answer is nobody knows. All right, so the live fine dogs, your body is shedding dead skin cells constantly. Okay, so the dogs pick up on that, and they also pick up on the respiration. They can just smell, the air that you exhale, and also the dead skin cells that you're shedding all the time. It's about 40,000 every minute. So every one of us right now is just dropping stuff. All right, so in your bedroom, if you ever notice that real fine white powder that's in the bedroom, those are dead skin cells that are in there. So but when you die, obviously the dead skin cells continue there because your skin as an organ continues to live for a while, but the respiration stops. So we ran 2 incidents last year. The Martin Potato Roll building collapsed. We were out there, and then also there was a chicken house that was being torn down that was collapsed in Adams County. And there was a deceased person in both of those voids. They're both of the buildings in a void. And Lucy indicated on both of them. But they had only been deceased for about 2 to 3 hours. So I started asking around, when does a person stop smelling like a live human and start smelling like human remains? And the answer is nobody really knows. There's been no research done on it. And it would be very hard to do because there's so many different conditions, weather conditions, just so much goes into that. But after a certain point, we got to ask the question, do you not smell like a live human and you yet don't smell like a deceased person? We just don't know. So there might be a period of time when neither dog will alert, but obviously there's a period of time when a live dog will alert on someone that's recently deceased. So exactly what that time frame is, we don't know. Yep.
what's the range?
How far can they detect a person? Well, a lot. There again, it's going to depend on the environment, the wind, how deep the person's buried. So oftentimes you'll see these dogs pick up scent 30, 40 feet away. They detect the scent, but then they have to zero in on it. But they'll go in that direction, and sometimes it's like watching them run with a string going in their nose. They can zero in on it that quick. I mean, it's amazing to watch these dogs work. It really is. How they do it, I'll never know. I mean, we're talking parts per trillion. When we're the particles that they're detecting the scent of. I mean, it's crazy stuff to see what they do. All right, anything else? All right, so Pennsylvania Task Force 1 is one of 28 FEMA urban search and rescue teams in the nation. Not every state has one, obviously. Some states have more than one, but Pennsylvania has one. We're located out of Philadelphia. It used to be located out of Harrisburg, but Harrisburg no longer wanted to be the sponsoring agency, so it transferred to Philadelphia. And I forget what year that was. That was probably back in like 15 or 16. All right, so the deployment that we went on down there, we were alerted on June 28th. Now this came down on the 21st. So Florida has two teams. They were already there as local resources. They had responded right away. One of them actually is based in Miami-Dade County. So they were on the scene, but quickly they realized this was going to take a lot longer than what they could do or what their capabilities were. So on the 28th, we were alerted of a possible deployment along with Ohio, Virginia too. So there's two teams in Virginia, Indiana, and New Jersey. And Virginia 1 and Maryland had both, and Tennessee had both, all three of those declined it. And really it was due to staffing issues. A lot of these teams are based out of county fire departments or city fire departments. And remember, this is in June of 21, so COVID's still having a pretty big impact on things. So they turned it down for staffing. Otherwise, we probably never would have seen it. So we were then activated on June 30th at around 3:30, and we were supposed to go to the Florida State University. But when we were on the way down there, they redirected us to the Port of Miami. And we're all sort of wondering, why are we going to the Port of Miami? Well, it turned out that the folks that were there, there's an incident support team that is working for FEMA that goes to these incidents, and they're responsible for the housing of these teams. And when we deploy as an 80-person team. So if you've got 4 or 5 teams coming, you've got quite a number of people that you have to be able to bed down, put somewhere. Oftentimes we'll go to an auditorium at a large enough facility. Convention centers are always a hot spot where we'll go, and we just throw up cots somewhere and we just sleep there. But in this case, instead of going to Florida State University, which was about an hour and a half to 2 hours away from Surfside, they sent us to the port because they found that the Royal Caribbean ship was there in dock being refurbished. They said, yeah, we'll take you. So we actually had 4 FEMA task forces there. So there was quite a few people on that boat, but it was a good and a bad thing because the 2 Florida teams were staying in tents right across the street from the condo collapse, and all the other task forces are down on a cruise ship. Although you might think this was pretty nice. I mean, the cruise ship was under renovation, and it worked out okay. But I think for other people that didn't have their dogs with them, wasn't too bad. But imagine being on a cruise ship with a dog that won't go to the bathroom in a little cart or a wooden box with mulch in it that they put for pets. You have to walk off of the ship, through the terminal, and get out to the other side where there's some grass. And Lucy wouldn't go in the box. So, she's pretty much a princess when it comes to that. But so it would take us, round trip to get her to go to the bathroom was probably about a good half hour. By the time you got to go through security again when you're coming back in. But after a while, the security people were just go. They didn't worry. So we were deployed from June 30th to July 16th, which is a 17-day deployment, which is longer than normal. Typically, they're 14 days, but things were going well, and people just wanted to keep working, so they kept us there. So the town of Surfside, a little bit of information about that. It's in Miami-Dade County in Florida. They have a mayor, a vice mayor, and 3 commissioners. So obviously, their form of government is a lot different than what we're used to in a Commonwealth, and I would say the Commonwealth is probably a little bit different or a little more odd than everybody else. So their population in 2010 census was roughly 6,000 people, and I'm sure it's over 6 now. But it's not a real big area, and it's a town within a county, but they're incorporated in their own way with their own governmental body, and they're mostly residential, and it's a lot of condos. So It's not so much a vacation area other than the condos that they rent, but most of the people live there, pretty much the whole time. All right. They have a very high Jewish community. But about half of their population is, and you're going to see some stuff later on about that, and where that sort of comes into play, because there was a lot of Jewish folks that lived in the building, and they got a lot of different folks there. I mean, population is Brazilian, Colombian, Cuban, Peruvian, pretty much what you'd expect for Florida. All right, so a little bit about the building itself. So it was built in 1981. It was along Collins Avenue. It's a 12-story building. I don't know, has anybody watched any of the documentaries on this or anything? Well, the architect, of course. So if I tell you that it was built during the cocaine cowboy era, you would understand some of the shortcomings that may have taken place during the construction. But, the building wasn't, when it was originally built, you're going to see some pictures inside. I mean, it's not a dump. What happened, I think, was it wasn't taken care of, because there's a sister building to this. You'll see a few pictures of that looks completely different, and it's been maintained. Now it's a condo, so all the people, purchase the apartment, they pay the fees, and the association is supposed to maintain it. Some do, some don't, but NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology, still hasn't released their report. Have you heard anything? I mean, it's coming up on, it's going to be, it's longer than normal, but they will come out with the report eventually on what they feel brought it down. But,
I think it was a multitude of failures.
Yeah.
There was design failure, there was construction failure, there was
Lack of maintenance.
There was lack of oversight during the building inspection.
Yeah.
It failed wherever it could possibly fail.
Yeah. And there's a lot of buildings in this area in Florida that were built during that time frame. And it's a real big thing that's going on down there. The inspections, and they're shortening the time frame for the inspections, but so we'll learn a lot about it eventually. But these are some pictures inside that I grabbed off of real estate websites before or when we were on the way back, before they got taken down. But you can see these are nice apartments. I mean, these are not, this building is nice, and they weren't cheap at all. And this area here, the pool deck, I think is probably what's gonna be the most suspect, or is probably going to come out to be a good possible call. I mean, I'm not an expert in this, but the one documentary I watched, one of the residents there say they would walk across the pool deck and the tiles were all loose, because the pool deck didn't have any drainage to it. It was just all flat. Water couldn't run off. It would just lay there. And it got under the tiles. And there's a parking garage underneath all of the building, and other than where the pool is, that's all parking underneath there. So you'll get to see some of that as we go through it. So this is the sister building right here, that's Champlain Towers North. It's identical to it, but it looks a lot different. It looks like it's maintained more, okay, which it was clearly. And they've done some tests, and they did some core drilling samples out of the concrete there, and didn't find any real problems. All right, so every morning we would go through an operations brief, and this is an aerial view that 3 times a day they were using drones to take aerial photographs of the building, of the progress. And this doesn't really look like a whole lot right now, but you can see how it was gridded off, and that's how we knew what area we were working in, or if we recovered something, we would say that we would be in a certain grid so that the police could then track all this. Because remember, this is actually a police incident. Regardless of the cause, they're the ones that have to deal with all the deceased and all of the property that we're pulling out of there. And we were pulling a lot of valuable things, just large bags of cash. One team was working, they got a Ziploc bag, pull it up, and it's full of diamonds. So all of this stuff has to be taken off, cataloged, and then you got to try to get it back to its rightful owner. So, and that's the police department's job in all this, but we would have to at least put it in a certain bin. And off to this side over here is there was a whole bunch of containers, and that's where we would have to take the stuff off the pile and put it when we would find it. So this is it's basically a representation of the side view of the building. So you have all the floors here, and then just a list of all the apartments. And what these numbers represent is who is still missing. Okay, so obviously when you start the search, you're starting up at the very top floor, and then you're working your way down. And if someone would be recovered, if they knew that someone was on the 6th floor in apartment 10 that was missing, that wasn't accounted for, that they knew was probably there, that would have been a number 1. It's like, okay, we know that we're in this area, we have to look. And then how we would find or know where we were in the building is, as you're sifting through the debris, you're looking for mail, you're looking for something that has somebody's name on it. And if it has someone's name on it that's, in apartment 10, or apartment, whatever it might be, 16, then, you look at something like this, all right, we know that we're looking for somebody that's missing in here. So, and we'll talk about some methods that were used to try to find the people or find where they were in the debris. But at this point, we're just looking for 16 people were remaining. All right. So this is this picture was taken the night of the collapse. You can still see there's a lot of real loose stuff like the mattresses and just, you'll see like bicycle frames and stuff in here. And this is the Miami-Dade Fire Department. They're just doing that hasty search on the surface. And they did pull a teenage boy out of here that rode it down from one of the upper floors. I forget which one he was on. But he survived. His mother did not. But they got him on just one of the surface rescues real quick there. All right, just an aerial photo of, what happened. I mean, I'm sure everybody saw the footage on TV of that security camera in the building next to it when it came down. It came down in the center part of this center part came down. The rear part stayed up for a little while. But what kept this part of the building up is this whole thing is a shear wall right here where the elevator shaft is. And, eventually that part of the building was brought down. You'll see a video of that coming up. But that's what the fire department was initially dealing with. You can still see start of the roof here, and you can make out the layers of the floor. So just another shot. Now this is obviously the pool deck. You can see all of this part of the pool deck is collapsed. And then this is the part of the building that came down, what's remaining there. You'll see some better pictures here. So this is really what we were working with. So you can see the folks standing up there from the Florida Task Force, and you can make out the lines of the floors. So for the most part, a 10-foot floor was collapsed down to probably about, between 1 and 2 feet for the most part. And the further down you got, obviously the more compressed it got. Down when you got to the floors like 5 and 6, there was really only that much room between. What you could still make out was the slabs. And all of this stuff, remember, fell into the parking garage as well. So you've got a parking garage below this that everything went into. All right, this is just another view. The pool would have been over to this side right here. This is a parking area that was sort of open air. That was still under the remaining part of the building that was standing. But you can see this is all roof here. And this is really before they started doing any of the delayering and digging into it. So we'll talk real quick about the Israeli Defense Force. Now these guys, they actually had a group that was in a military training center in Indiana that was doing some training. And because we go back to that high Jewish population, a request went out to get some help from Israel on this thing. These guys were a godsend in a couple different ways. And the reason for that is, one, they've got a lot of experience dealing with finding people in collapsed buildings and finding them quickly. Okay, so their techniques and their methods, we learned a lot from them, during this deployment. The other thing that they can do that we can't do in the United States is, so as soon as they got here, they started interviewing families and the family members, the folks that were in there. And they would ask them all kinds of questions. So how many people were there? Where did they sleep? If it was a husband and wife, did they both sleep in bed at night, or did one sleep on the sofa, one sleep in bed? Where was the bed in the bedroom? And we got all this kind of detail from these guys. And the reason we don't do so much of that and share that in the United States is privacy laws. Okay, so we can gather certain information, but you can't share. Sometimes you can't even ask that information. These guys would just get the information. They also were the conduit to the families, and they would keep the families updated, sometimes better than we do. Like I said, we learned a lot from these guys during the deployment, but they were extremely helpful. They were very helpful in getting that information so that we could find the people quickly and be able to recover them and get them out. And there again, their techniques are pretty good. The other thing they were very helpful to us, anyone from that is not Jewish, they would recognize something of value to the person, and these are all different books and different things that needed to come off and be kept separate, because they need to get back to the person that they belong to or the family. Technically, I believe they like some of these things to be buried with the person as well. So they were very helpful when it came to that. All right, so working on the pile. This is really what we were dealing with. You saw that video where Lucy was running those big slabs of concrete. Well, this is what it's really like. It's just pulverized, rock and concrete, and it's very slippery. There's nothing that's stable. The dogs got around pretty good. They didn't have too much issue whatsoever. But humans, it's tough, much harder. So this is the squad that I was working with. Most of the time I didn't run Lucy. Lucy ran this pile one time, really, and that was for optics. But other than that, I would help out wherever, doing different things. But one of the human remains dogs had an indication in this area, and we were just trying to dig down through there. But you can see there's a lot of rebar. This picture here is just this area. And you can see some, things, the pieces of mail, and that's what we would be looking for to find out where we were. So if you find a piece of mail and you see a name on it, and ironically, the Israeli Defense Force was sharing all of their information with the New York Times, we would actually bring up the New York Times app on our phone, and they had a really nice 3D representation that you could go floor by floor, and you could see if that person was missing or not. So if you saw a name and it says the person's fine, then you're not going to spend a lot of time in that area. So, could we do that in the United States? Share that information with the New York Times? No, it would never happen.
So if you go back 2 slides, you're standing right there,
Right there. Yeah. Yep.
You're standing under the section that hasn't fallen yet.
Yeah.
I would have been nervous.
Well, yeah. Well.
If those hard hats aren't going to hold.
No, definitely not. And you can see this column right here, right? There used to be a floor above that basically punched down through. So part of the task forces that deploy are structure collapse engineers, and these are engineers that are obviously very experienced, but then they go through a lot of special training and all that. They're the ones that will evaluate the building and tell us if it's safe to be where we are. Now, the engineer that's with Pennsylvania, Greg Rogowski, lives in Dauphin County. If he tells me it's safe to stand there, I trust him, because he's not going to tell me to do anything that I shouldn't or go anywhere that I shouldn't. But we put our lives in their hands to make that assessment. And I talked to him we were not long after we got there. So what's the chance of the rest of that coming down? He goes, 10%. We were more worried about loose items falling off of the thing than the building itself coming down. And you'll see a video when they brought it down. It was still pretty solid, but But yeah, it's a good question. Should you be standing there? Well, the engineers looked at that, and there was a lot of engineers there that kept looking at it. They had a lot of monitoring points. Behind where we're standing here is a big condo. Then you have that apartment building, that blue one that's there. They were on all different floors, with their equipment just monitoring any movement on it. And the building never moved until they brought it down. All right, so this is not long after we got there. You can still see there's a fair amount there, probably maybe 2.5 floors of debris. And the heavy equipment operators, you see this is I don't know what they call it, but the company that was there that showed up with the heavy equipment, they're actually a demolition company, which was good. The building's already down, but they had the equipment and the know-how of what to do, what not to do. But these equipment operators, they didn't speak much English, but let me tell you, these guys were good. The guy that was one of the guys operating this big long, it's a shear. It's what they use to cut through concrete and steel as they're trying to bring a building down. But one of the Florida canine handlers shared a story with us. She was up on the pile, and this guy was working, and she saw a small purse, and he could see it as well. And she goes, "I'll give you $5 if you can pick that up." He picked that thing up with that shear and brought it over and put it in her hand. I mean, these guys were good, and they knew they quickly learned the environment they were working in, because a lot of times if you're working an excavator and you need to level things up, you'll just turn around, scoop some dirt up and move it around so you can get your tracks up on there to level things out. Well, you can't do that here because you don't know what you're going to be digging up. So they learned to work with us, and they were very much aware of what we needed to do, and were very careful. After the disaster declaration ended, they had to switch companies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, and things got a lot more dangerous for us. But so, continuing the work on the pile, we're starting to get down a little bit. You can see there's just tons and tons of rebar that was there that made it difficult just to walk around. And you'll see another picture where, you can see where it's a true hazard for the dogs that were working. But when someone was found, they'd send a crew out, and they'd get into Tyvek suits. They would be put into a body bag and then carried off the building, or hand carried down. Eventually, what we started doing was putting them in a big bucket that was lifted out with the crane, because it was a lot easier and a lot safer and quicker to get the person off the pile than trying to hand carry them down. So this is the picture I'm talking about with the rebar. So as the excavators are working, they're not digging down. All they're doing is taking the bucket out, scraping with the teeth, maybe 6 inches at a time. They're combing the area is what they're doing for us. Well, when they're combing the area, all that rebar starts to go in one direction. And if you have a dog that's running up the hill, the dog isn't going to see that stuff. They could easily run right into that and, go into an eye or hook the skin on their, on their ribs or something. But fortunately, and it's hard to believe, the only injury we had to any of the dogs working there was a cut on a pad to one of the dogs. The rest of this stuff, there was just super minor, simple things. The dogs acclimated pretty quickly to it. And the one day that I did run Lucy on the pile, I mean, you got to understand this. You've got every smell that you can imagine on this site. You got the busted up concrete. You got refrigerators that were full of food that's rotting. You've got the human remains that's on there. But every household item, or you look at this room, everything in here is just all smashed up, mixed up. And it had a very unique odor. And when I threw Lucy up on the pile, she jumps up there, and she starts just smelling and sniffing around. She turns around and looks at me like, "What is going on?" And, just go. And she took off, and she acclimated pretty quickly, because you got to understand, the dogs smell everything. When we see a cheeseburger, we see and smell a cheeseburger. Well, the dog smells the bun, the cheese, the meat, the lettuce, the tomato. They can identify and discriminate each one of those individual scents. So when a dog is smelling something like this, they're picking everything up, every single bit of it. but she did well. This is just another picture, and it's hard to see, but some of the debris, you know, you got a lot of stuff. You got a little teddy bear here, you know, and it brings it home as you're working there that, you know, what you're looking for and what you're trying to find. And it's everybody got through it pretty well. We've had a couple people that have had some issues afterwards, but they've gotten the help that they've needed, and everybody's doing well. There is a canine handler from Florida that we talk to often down there. She has not gone back to work since this, and you know she's still to this day having a pretty bad time with it. So this is one of the crane baskets that I was talking about. Initially, what they were doing is throwing debris in here. You can tell this is an early on picture because you can still see a lot of the floors. But eventually, what we did is we stopped taking the debris off with that, using the heavy equipment. But this is what we would transfer the remains out. And the crane operators down there were amazing as well. So now we're getting ready to bring the building down. So the one big concern was, and I skipped a lot of the slides because we don't have a ton of time, but there was a line here with traffic cones, and we weren't allowed to work beyond that line towards the remaining part of the building because they were afraid of debris that was falling down off of it. So they were going to bring the rest of the building down because there was a tropical storm that was coming up. It was actually coming up in the Gulf, and they were afraid that that was going to bring it down. The engineers weren't too worried about that, but so let's get the building down so that we can work in this area because there was a lot of people that were still in this area that needed to be recovered. So what they did was we were concerned that it's like, well, how do we know you bring this building down and the rest of it falls on top of all this? How do we know where to start and where to stop? Well, the demolition company says, don't worry about it. Well, everybody else was like, no, we got to know where it was. So they put all this geotextile fabric over the whole part of the pile so that we would know if there was anything on top of that where we needed to start up where we left off. So this is just another shot. They're getting ready to bring it down. So this video, hopefully everything will play good here. This is when they brought it down. It was midnight on July 4th. They wanted to do it at 9 o'clock on July 4th because they felt that, well, all the noise would just sound like fireworks to people. But there was a lot of different things going on. They had a couple injunctions from residents that still had things in here. There was one person that said, I left my service animal behind. You can't bring the building down. I don't know about you, but if I had a service animal, the last thing I would do is leave the service animal behind. I mean, that dog or whatever it is coming with me. And a lot of these people were able to come downstairs and get out, or they were evacuated from fire department ladder trucks off the balconies. But there was a couple injunctions, different things that were going on that held it off from going at 9 o'clock. So eventually at midnight they brought it down. Now, keep in mind, these are fire department guys filming this, and some of what you might hear. So the first couple shots you hear is anybody that's familiar with buildings that are being demolished. They're taking out the support, and then the other larger hits are actually what start bringing it down. Now CDI, Controlled Demolition Incorporated, they're out of Phoenix, Maryland. The Lazo family. If you Google CDI or Controlled Demolition Incorporated, they've done some documentaries on this family. They've been around for quite a while, and when they were preparing to bring the building down, they brought truckloads of stone and put it on Collins Avenue, the street right in front of the building, because the main sewer line ran down that street. And they were concerned that if the building came down on there and damaged the sewer line, they'd have all kinds of other problems to deal with. Well, the guy from from CDI kept saying, you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to do this. No, we're going to do it anyway. So they did it. After they brought that building down, there wasn't a single piece of concrete on Collins Avenue from that building, and there was nothing on that geotextile fabric. That building came straight down. There was just dust. We were staged at the one hotel where this picture was taken, and I thought for sure that all the furniture that was out on the pool deck would be crapped up. Nothing. I mean, these guys are very good at what they do. Sometimes it goes wrong, but this one here they had right. And they're starting with a building that's already partially collapsed to begin with. So, it was amazing at what they did. So here's another picture. This is one of the human remains dogs working right here. And I just show you these. Like, this is like the 6th and 7th floor. And the street, this person right here, these guys are standing on the street. So we knew that they were about the 6th and 7th floor, and you can see how much room's between there, how much it compressed down. But the human remains dogs did a phenomenal job here. They really sped up the process of zeroing in on where you needed to get an excavator in, where you needed to start doing some more digging. Nighttime operations, this was a 24-hour thing. We had plenty of lights there brought in with generators and light towers. So I was on what we call the day shift, which was from noon until midnight, and the night shift was midnight till noon. This was the first time the system ever split the shifts like that, and the reason for that was so that you didn't have to work in the heat of the day the whole time, which was, actually pretty smart. I don't know who came up with the plan to do it that way, but we're typically always on 12-hour shifts, but it's like typically 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening, and you're working all night. Well, they split it differently, and that has been pretty much the norm since then. On any other deployment, if you have to work 24 hours a day. But you can see in this picture here, this whole rubble pile is really starting to come down a lot lower. All right, we're getting down there. On July 7th, we transitioned from search to recovery, and everything stopped. Everybody came off the pile. They did a bit of a service, for the people that were still there. They had a couple rabbis that were coming in and did some really nice things to make that transition, because the families obviously don't want you to change from search to recovery, but at that point they realized that, okay, we've got to do it. And so we took a quick stop, some of the IDF guys, some of the PA guys, and it was just a short service, and then everybody back on the pile and got to work. So this is one of the cars that was in the parking garage below where it came down. They started pulling them out, getting them on rollbacks. And you can see this is a picture. This is 2 cars that were strapped onto each other that are being lifted out with the crane. So now at this point, pretty much all the recovery is done, but there's still like 3 or 4 people missing even at this point here. That's a Jeep, or what used to be a Jeep, that was pulled out of the debris.
Did you find anybody in cars?
No, they were looking, and that's one of the things they were looking for. They weren't sure, but yeah, no one was found in any vehicles. All right, so now we're starting to get. I just took these pictures and threw them in here. We were finished up on July 13th, and the first time that I went up to the top deck of the ship, Lucy and I went up there. We got back. This was probably about 1:30 in the morning. We were walking around there. We were lucky. We had a room that had a veranda. A lot of the people had rooms that are interior to the ship, had no windows at all. But these are the dogs that deployed with Pennsylvania. That's Scout, 7, Lucy's in the middle, and then Zach and Memphis. So we've got a mix of shepherds and labs and stuff in Pennsylvania. Most Maryland is always they're all labs. They don't have any shepherds. This is sort of what it looks like right after we left. It looks not much different today. It's just a big hole in the ground for the most part, all cleaned up. Now, remember I said that when we left, there were still 2 people that were missing on the day that we left. And at that point, things were pretty much cleared out. I mean, it had no idea where these folks were. All the debris that they took off the site, they took it to a nearby airport, and they were supposed to bring it in. Every dump truck was supposed to dump their load, and then the next dump truck would come in and dump the load, so that you would have all of these small piles and just rows that you could run the human remains dogs on. But the guys that were assigned to work this didn't get that information, and they kept dumping the dump trucks, and they just pushed it all up into these big, huge piles. So they're working with the human remains dogs on this stuff, sifting through everything. It's another picture here. So now all you have is just debris and the dogs working. But they found the last 2 people, and were able to identify them. They found a shoulder bone and they found a tooth of the last 2 people, and that's all and it was the dogs that found it on this. So it's truly amazing what the dogs can do. But now these people probably weren't intact in any. Most of the people that we pulled out were intact. They were laying in their bed, because that building came straight down. And the ones that I was involved in getting out, that's where we got them. But some of them in that front part of the building that came down and slid a lot, that they didn't. They weren't so much intact. That's another picture of them working that pile. So I mean, that's a huge debris pile in and of itself that's been all mixed up and just churned up with everything else. But the dogs were able to do what they needed to do there, and were able to find and identify everybody. Now this is Carly. This is my next dog that's coming up, another yellow lab. So she's 3, and hopefully she's passed her first test. Now we're just waiting for the certification test. We're hoping in Ohio they're going to do one in April. So she's doing well. So that's all I got. This is the ride home on the bus. So Lucy's sleeping. She slept a lot down there. We didn't get to do much with these dogs.
So where's Lucy? You keep these dogs?
Yeah, these are our dogs.
Say,
yeah.
hey, I'm done with you. Get out. Yeah.
No, there are dogs. So every state is a little bit different, or every task force, I should say, how they do it. So Pennsylvania, we buy the dog, we own the dog, from the time they're a pup until the time they're gone. Now Maryland, they're run by Montgomery County Fire Department. So the fire department buys the dog. So it's a lot like a police dog. So if you're assigned the dog and something happens to you, you retire before the dog's ready to retire, the dog will be reassigned. But if you work the dog until they retire, they just give you the dog and you keep the dog. And Maryland or Montgomery County will pay for all the vet bills and all that stuff, as where in Pennsylvania there are dogs and we just pay. We get a stipend every year to help offset that cost, but there are dogs, which I sort of like it that way a little bit better, because I can do local things with Lucy and Carly that I can't do with, actually there's a guy that lives right here in E-Town, Jeremy Schaffner. Some of you may know him. He works for Montgomery County. He's got a certified live fine dog. For him to be able to work that dog in Pennsylvania, it has to go through the Pennsylvania Emergency Management, down to Maryland Emergency Management, to Montgomery County to get permission to do it. That's where I can just go and work my dog. So, and even if I was with Maryland, I would probably, you can still buy your own dog. I would probably do that because I want to be able to work, if a tornado comes through a town local here, I want to be able to work my dog, So, but yeah. Yep.
So your dog has this gift. How have you used that not in a disaster? Like, do you use it to find the remote,
No, they're working dogs. They're not the most well-behaved dogs. They're very extremely friendly, but I've been lucky. Neither of mine are chewers, but no, it's incredible how they just learn how to do this. But yeah, she'll only indicate on live human scent. I mean, this entire room, if if we had a box in the corner that was big enough to put someone in, that the scent could come out, the person could be in there, I could send her in this room, and she would just go around and greet and check everybody out. She would know that she's working, and she's looking for live human scent that she can smell but can't see. And she would eventually start barking at that box. She would catalog every one of us in this room and say, no, I see you, I smell you, I see you, I smell you. And then it's like, nope, there's one over here that I can smell, but I can't see. Yeah, how they do it, but no, they're really not good for much of anything other than being good dogs. I mean, they're great dogs. They are.
How old were you when you started training them?
You get them when they're 8 weeks old. Then you start there. So like I got her certified. She was 4 when I got her. So it takes a while. And Carly just turned 3 at the end of November, and she's ready now. But yeah, some people will. The soonest you can certify a dog is 18 months, and some people try to rush through it, but it's really not worth it because you're pushing the dog too much, and the dog. If the dog isn't having fun, if you don't enjoy doing it, they're not going to want to do it. So you have to sort of let them come into do it. So a lot of times they're between 2 and 3 before they get certified. But there's some dogs that'll certify at 18 months. A lot of those are the human remains dogs. They're like border collies and stuff that are just so focused on work, But labs are good because they're just really, really good air scent dogs, and they understand how to do that. They have good agility, and they're just super friendly. But we have a lot of Belgian Malinois in the system, Shepherds, but there's aggression issues when it runs into that too, and they go through aggression tests as part of the test. But it's labs are the most predominant for sure. I think there's over 60% in the system are labs.